Welcome back to Living Limitless, Conquer Shame, and Play Your Way to Freedom. I'm Andrea Luzon, Legacy Liberator. I'm a guide and explorer. I support women as they reignite their passion, purpose, and power. And I know I've probably said this to you before, but one of the really impactful modalities that I like to utilize with my clients is called reconnective healing. And I will tell you more about that later because today we're here with Kara Latta. Thank you so much for joining us. Introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I am the founder and the chief fun officer of the Playful Warrior because we can create our own legacy. So I decided to call myself a chief fun officer, and I'm a play and mindset coach for adults. So I help people heal their inner child so they can connect back to their authentic, playful nature and really live this life that lights them up from the inside out.
Oh my goodness. And that is what drew me to you, is because, the second half of our series title is Play Your Way to Freedom. And so a friend of mine introduced me to Kara, and she is known as the Playful Warrior. And so I just thought that that was so perfect. So, what are some steps that you take with individuals, or what are some ways that you guide or lead your clients in returning to that, childlike wonder that it's in all of us? I think it's just waiting to come back out, and we just kind of like we can have the tendency to stuff it down as adults. Like, no, play is not for adults. So how do you help people bring that back to life?
Yeah, so I think there's like a lot to the process. Often, what holds us back from playing is subconscious mindset beliefs, though. People often believe they aren't enough. If they fully express themselves, they'll be judged, they'll be criticized, they'll be rejected, they'll be weird. Often, there's beliefs like this that are relatively similar to each person, even if each person has a different story. It's amazing how we're all so connected. So that's why I actually call myself a play and mindset coach, because mindset often holds us back, right? We feel like play is weird, or yeah, we're just going to be rejected. So really looking and becoming aware of those beliefs and getting ready to heal those beliefs so that we feel safe enough to play, because often it's that we don't feel safe enough or we don't feel connected to our body to actually let go and to be uninhibited, because maybe our abandonment wounds are being triggered. So there is a whole subconscious mindset aspect to playing and really returning to this nature. And also, it's really about taking small, slow steps. So I have a program that's 8 weeks of immersive play, all different kinds of playfulness, curiosity, uninhibited creativity. But how I recommend, if someone is like new to play and they're really looking to rediscover that, using a blindfold is an amazing, amazing tool, because the blindfold takes away the critical factor of our conscious mind that judges what we create, right? We've learned that creativity often is associated with how well someone can do something. So many people think they aren't creative because they aren't artists, or they can't paint or they can't sing, which is so not true. I mean, my work is really showing people that you are so creative. We are all creative is just thinking about things with a different perspective. And to really get back there and to believe that again, blindfold is great because we're no longer focused on the perfectionism of creating, right? There's so many like artists and creators who actually are perfectionists. And that's actually not the true spirit of creating. Like, it's meant to be playful, it's meant to be fun and joyous and freeing and liberating. So when we do work with the blindfold, no matter the outcome, it doesn't matter anymore. It gets to be fun. It's like so freeing to give yourself this permission to just explore. And so that's just one example as well of how to start going on this play journey, because so many of us actually think we might be playing. And, it's not up to me to say you are playing or you're not playing, but I would just invite you to ask, like, how do you feel? If you playing really depends on an outcome, like winning a game, or it has to look a certain way, and you're really kind of mixed in with perfectionistic tendencies, it's actually not the true spirit of play, right? We really want to follow our curiosity and our creativity. So for me, like, learning to play is actually just synonymous with like healing perfectionism.
Wow. Perfectionism. Yeah. So how do we heal perfectionism?
Yeah, well, it's mindset. It's really, really about like mindset. So, I mean, I'm a hypnotherapist. I do neurolinguistic programming as well. Also have a really amazing technique called time techniques where we can go on our subconscious timeline and rewire what we experience and take learnings from past events so that we can move forward because, a lot of our perfectionism comes from believing love is conditional, that will only be worthy if, we do things a certain way or and then we start morphing who we are and kind of taking on these coping mechanisms to really survive and feel lovable. So this isn't the truth though, but we don't know that as kids, and our subconscious gets programmed, and 95% of what we're doing is driven by our subconscious. So it's really important to rewire the subconscious to this supportive, loving identity where we have thoughts, behaviors, and actions actually driving us towards what we want to do. So definitely mindset work, like rewiring your beliefs that support you. So maybe if you don't feel playful, a new belief could be like, I'm learning to play, because our words are so powerful. So if we're saying, I don't feel playful, we're really not opening up space to learn how to play. So again, like really being mindful of our words, I would say, getting really clear on a future self identity. And maybe if you want to play your future self, is playful and you're open to that and you're excited about that, because words can really expand our possibility. And then actually just exploring play and watching it as it opens up our imagination, and suddenly new solutions will become available and we'll be more connected to our creativity. And there's just so much magic that happens. But yeah, it is really about, like, I would say the mindset and the experiential, and they both really just combine to make this like beautiful potion.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So mindset work and experiencing, putting yourself in situations where you get to be playful and you get
Yeah.
to explore, what does playfulness feel like as an
Yeah,
adult? Yeah.
totally.
I like the idea of the blindfold. That sounds exciting. I'm having like visions of group like games that I've played where you blindfold and like draw something, and like you can't pick up the pen, and then I'm having this memory of looking at trying to draw a dog with while blindfolded, and not lifting your pen, and looking how it turned out very much not looking like a dog. And then I remember going into judgment of like thinking, why couldn't I do that? I should be great. And then thinking, I'm clearly not good at this, which is so interesting because the game was meant to be fun.
Totally.
The game was meant to be fun. It wasn't meant to be an exercise in self-criticism. So,
Exactly. And I think this is actually where like inner child healing really comes in. So for me in those instances, absolutely. Like I work with like organizations and I do one-on-one coaching, but that's the most thing I hear is like, oh my gosh, this looks awful, or something like that, where people are always just quick to judge what they create. Like we always need to classify stuff as like it's either good or bad. And kids didn't do that. They were just so in their, like, young kids, very young kids, so in their self-expression where they're just wanting to explore and create and like be there, and they'll feel their emotions and they'll dance freely. And it's like such a beautiful thing. So it's like, how do we return to that when we have like years of conditioning and we're classifying things? So for me, what really helped also was connecting with little me, like little Kara, who was really playful as a very young child. I would dance around the house and I would like clap and shriek every time it was time to eat. And I was just this like full expression. But then I started morphing and dimming myself down so that I could like fit in and not be bullied. And I just wanted love, right? It kind of all came back to that. So for me, then as an adult, when I realized how much I had abandoned myself really for other people, I got really curious about that. I mean, I got really sad about that. And it's very normal to grieve that. But I started connecting with little me. And anytime I would create, I would connect with them. I'm not going to tell this little girl that what she just created is bad. Right. And it's like when you start creating with your inner child in mind, suddenly you're that much more compassionate and accepting of yourself. And so it's like, create with like little you. How would you speak to little you? And when you start doing that, the narrative really changes. You'll feel a lot better as well. And you're going to be able to have more fun too.
wow. I'm already just like, when do we start? Sounds great. Perfect. And it sounds like you marry a lot of different modalities. Like I heard you say NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. And I heard you mention, did you mention hypnotherapy as well?
I did,
Yeah. And
yes.
then inner child work. So
Yes.
I'm, yeah. So I'm hearing that you, in your, because you have such a wide experience, that you've been able to incorporate all of those things, or at least you can offer different pieces of it as you work with a client or a company.
Totally. And yeah, and I'll be totally honest, like, so with companies, actually, I don't do as much as inner child healing,
Mm.
because companies aren't open to it. You know, a lot of
Not,
traditional
not
organizations.
yet.
Exactly. There are
Not yet.
some, and it's like
Mhm.
happening slowly.
Mhm.
But you know, that is my goal. That is my goal, is to make it more mainstream. And I'm doing it in ways where I start introducing them to like playfulness. And you know, they love talking about the science behind play. Most of them aren't quite yet at connecting with little them, and it definitely scares some people, but my goal is to, you know, keep going, keep spreading the message, and it will happen. But yeah, I would say the most like transformative work I'm doing is on like a one-on-one level, where I get to do inner child work. I get to do, yeah, I get to do hypnotherapy. Hypnosis is my favorite. It's really changed my life. I get to do neurolinguistic programming, all of that fun stuff. Because often too, and I think it is important to talk about, when I do group like organizations, you know, everyone's on Zoom or they're on video, and they're around colleagues, and they're supposed to act in this like professional way, depending
Mhm.
on the company. Some companies have like a fun culture, but it can be scary to be so vulnerable in front of your colleagues and show this other side of you, right? And it will really trigger that fear of judgment and shame potentially as well. And so for me, my biggest mission is creating a safe space where people can explore themselves and explore play and know that there's no right or wrong. I think that's the biggest difference with what I do versus like, you know, there's like some kind of like trivia things people do, or some kind of aspect of play in organizations. But for me, it's about, there's no right or wrong. There's no competition. We are all on the same page together. And when you know that you can create and you can't fail, that's a really freeing feeling. And that's when you start seeing other sides of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Having a safe environment, trusting that your peers are open and they'll be vulnerable with you
Yeah.
instead of, wearing a mask and keeping up a facade. Yeah, that does have a lot to do with it. And I can see why that would make the one-on-one coaching work better. Do you also do small groups? So there's a
Yeah.
group coaching aspect where you can create that safe uh, environment for people to take the masks off and get vulnerable.
So for now, I've only been doing group events.
Hmm.
I do plan to do group coaching in the future, though, likely next year, which I'm really excited about, because it is so beautiful to have a community of people who all want other people who are really connected to play and are ready to go on this journey. And yeah, so I'm definitely excited to do that. I've done some events though,
Hmm.
and these are all like people into inner child healing who are ready to go deep and ready to share and just crave that deep connection, because you know, often we feel like we're suppressing parts of ourselves.
Hmm.
When we can't be playful, we're suppressing our playful parts to fit in.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can relate to that. And that is
Yeah.
bringing up my trauma story. So I would love, since part of our series, we're talking about shame. And um, I was guided by some people I admire to maybe not have shame on the forefront, to maybe talk about fear, because that's something that's a more relatable word. And yet the individuals that I'm attracting in are people that are aware of fear, they're aware of stuckness, they're aware of having a story about themselves and something that might have stemmed from the past, and it's probably not true. Like a truth that we have about ourselves that's kind of holding us back, or a truth we have about the world that is creating a mindset where we're holding ourselves back. And so I would like to be a bit edgy and really I'd like to walk all the way to the edge and talk about shame. And so you had mentioned abandonment wounds and perfectionism. And I can definitely relate to having attachment to perfectionism. And for me, when I think of Brene Brown says something beautiful about perfectionism is the 20-pound shield that we carry, that we lug around, hiding behind, trying to portray a certain image to avoid getting hurt. But the weight is awfully heavy, and really all we're doing is perpetuating our separateness. We're just keeping people away because we're not being real. We're not taking the mask off. We're just hiding behind this shield of perfectionism. And so for me, I have found that perfectionism facade is like, well, if I just keep overextending myself and being what other people want, then they won't leave me. Then I won't be cast out of the tribe because I'll be more like everyone else. And this is a story from my past, especially as an adult. In most of my 20s, I wandered around the world and got to do all sorts of playful, fun things: bartending, teaching English, backpacking, canoeing down rivers, all of these amazing things, and journaling the whole time, deep self-reflection. Most of the traveling was alone. Abroad, I was pretty much alone. So it was me and a journal and just like living. And then I came back to the Midwest, the middle of the United States for anyone international. And I found that, I fell in with a group of like-minded individuals, very free thinking. And then I bought a house, and I found that the buying of the house brought up like a story of lack, like, oh no, big bills are now due. And then I met a man here, not so much in this freewheeling, open-minded tribe, in a more conservative thinking, more of a logical brain group. And all of a sudden I found these stories from my past just came flooding out of me, and hiding felt more natural. Speaking more in a more meek way suddenly was this like mask. So I started putting on this like mask to like, what are these people? How can I fit in with these new people? And that was a really tough time. So I got to, in the last few years, I've done so much work to dive into that and see like, where did that come from? Like, where is this like money's hard to make story come from? Like having bills is like, means you're going to have trouble with money. Like, having bills means you're not going to have money for bills. What is this correlation? And then like, what is this feeling of being kind of pushed out? Why do I assume that if I'm my authentic self, that I'll be pushed out of a group? So yeah, so I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience, anything from your childhood that has kind of tumbled out of you as you've become an adult, and how have you moved through it?
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your story. And I really relate to it in so many ways as well. And yeah, it's so amazing. Like, I've also done so much work. And for me, what was really surprising is, this stuff doesn't sometimes only just come from childhood. It can be like generational, like generations of trauma passed down. So that has been another thing to navigate as well. But yeah, for me, it's very interesting. I suppressed my authentic self for so long. Actually, one of the things I had the most shame about, that I actually couldn't really speak about publicly until I was 30, which is wild, was having epilepsy. So I was diagnosed with epilepsy around grade 6. And this was something I felt a lot of shame about. Even my family was really worried because for anyone who's not familiar, the history of epilepsy is actually quite wild. Like, even in the 1920s, you could not get married if you had epilepsy. Epileptics were really outcasts in society. They were demonized. They thought they were demons. So there was just so much going on in the history of epilepsy. So again, that could be generational. But then for me also, I remember in school, people seeing people with seizures and laughing because they were weird. And for me, most of my seizures were nocturnal. So I thought I could get by with not sharing it. But of course, there were so many consequences and side effects I was dealing. But again, I never shared when I was exhausted or I had like a migraine or anything that was happening. I just didn't share. I would always be like, oh yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. Even though inside I feel like I'm dying. But I was so worried about just like keeping things up and really worried about bullying. And I risked my life like multiple times because sometimes I would have a seizure in the daytime, but because I didn't tell anyone, no one was ready. And, I would wake up in the hospital, but my only thought would be, oh my gosh, people are going to know now. I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to be criticized, not like, I'm glad I'm okay. Like something really serious could have happened. So for me, it was like so much shame. Oh my gosh, it was so, so heavy. And it's just so sad looking back now, the place I'm in and like looking back. But yeah, that like really, really, gosh, just I wasn't able to speak my truth and I just really hid. And even when I made the first iteration, so my program has like a playbook and I share my story in it. In the first iteration of that, I didn't even share that as part of my story. And it's like such a big part because I just really didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to be associated. Even my family, we called them attacks instead of seizures, as if that was a better word, because we just didn't want to be associated with epilepsy. And I mean, this has so much to do with conditioning, but it's like, I had no self-acceptance, right? So it was really learning to heal that. And once I started doing this inner child healing and talking to little me, she was so abandoned and so sad and felt so rejected. And obviously too, I started seeing people with epilepsy in the world who were owning it. Like I remember seeing this one girl going down a runway and she had a seizure, but then she got right back up and was like snapping and was like going on. And I'm like, that is so inspiring. Like, that's who I want to be. Like, I want to show people that they can be themselves and, things happen, you can get back up and it's okay. So I think that kind of started changing my narrative. And then I started doing subconscious belief work as well, to the point where then now I'm actually an ambassador for Epilepsy Toronto, where I'm from, which is amazing. And I often do events with them, but it was definitely a journey. And also I mentioned those abandonment wounds too. I definitely had very mentally ill parent and was a caretaker. And it got very, very, very challenging. There was like alcoholism, codependency, hoarding, all of that. And for a young kid to deal with all of that was a lot. And I know so many of us do, but this is really where my perfectionism and people pleasing came in, right? To get that love and that external validation I wasn't getting at home because I felt so unlovable. So that was really my story, was feeling unlovable and also feeling a lot of shame that my family had this going on too, and not even sharing it with people because I felt it was so shameful. And all I wanted was to fit in, which I think is also why I disconnected from play, because play meant sometimes not fitting in and walking with disapproval. It wasn't something that was universally accepted. It meant unique self-expression. And I was walking away from unique self-expression. I just wanted to conform and be the norm and finally feel normal because I felt so weird. Yeah, exactly. So play is actually like the opposite of that, right? Play is so much more than fun. Often people are just like, oh, play is fun. But when we really look at it, we're coming into the world. We are curious, creative, spontaneous, vulnerable, playful. This is our true nature. This is what our soul wants to do. And then we learn to walk away from that, which is why on my journey, when I finally kind of started seeing all this and I was like ready to heal, I was in a very dark place. I went through a dark night of the soul or a spiritual crisis. Everything in my life kind of just blew up. Like I was having more seizures. I had a cockroach infestation. I had a partnership end. I was let go from a job, just like my whole life was being destroyed so that inevitably I could create a new one. And in that process of like doing shadow work and doing like healing and inner child work, I realized that like the one thing I was missing was play. Play was who I really was. Like little Kara, before everything that happened, was really playful. And I knew we all were in a way, and we were just all so disconnected. So play was really what called me to heal myself, to heal my inner child. And I just got like really strong spiritual messages that this was what I was supposed to do. And for the first time, I followed my gut, because this was not like an idea that people were like, this is a great idea. Because I came from a corporate background and I was like very good at morphing and being professional. Like if you probably ask previous employers, their feedback of me would probably be like very professional, as if that's like a character trait or something. So people were very surprised this is what I was doing. And there was a lot of disapproval. So again, it was like learning to trust myself, walk forward with my inner child and me in the universe. Like I believe this was all really beautifully co-created. And yeah, it was like very challenging, but like so fulfilling and so beautiful. And if anything, I just hope people can see how much their life can radically change as well. in a short amount of time too. It's so, so beautiful once, like you said, we're able to lift that burden of the shame and all these, everything in the past, and really find learnings from that. And now I think it's so beautiful to find other people like you as well who share similar stories, and we've been able to rise and now help others rise. And yeah, it's pretty wild, that if I saw myself a few years ago, I would be shocked.
If yourself a few years ago saw you now, it would be that Kara would be saying, what?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So like, it's exciting to think that, like, imagine in a few years or even a year where you could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So the story of trauma and looking at it, I really admire what you shared about how things can be intergenerational. I just like, the story of people who had epilepsy from the 1920s and even earlier, that just how they were cast out because they weren't understood. And you know how humans are so great with, being around things we don't understand.
Oh yeah.
Historically, we're great at that. So I can see how that would still, that would live in your body and your awareness, like deep subconscious, and then your family as well, that they didn't want to, um, I'm sure in a way they were doing their best to protect you.
Totally.
And yet they were also perpetuating the story of like, this is not okay. I am not okay.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So my story of, coming back to the Midwest after being gone for 10 years, coming back to the Midwest and then trying to figure out how to fit in, and that bringing up my stories around shame of, being judged, feeling as though I was being judged as a child in certain situations. Stories about money, abundance doesn't apply to me. There is not enough. These kind of lack mentalities, all of that. And anyway, so that was a really tough time. So I ended up taking a job that really didn't fit when I was, I don't know, like 32, 32, 33. Anywho, and I stayed for 8 years and just kept staying and staying and staying and saying, because then we had kids. My husband and I had twins. And so during that time while I was at this company, we had kids, and it was, oh, well, we'll stay for the health insurance, even though the job wasn't speaking to me. Well, I will say one of my children has ADHD, and at the same time, even if that's a overblown diagnosis, one of my children walks to the beat of his own drum very, very distinctly. And kind of what's landing for me as you talk about the importance of coming back to being proud of ourselves for walking to the beat of our own drum, and how that's kind of pushed out. It tends to be pushed out of us or tamped. Like you said, you were dimming your light from a very young age. And that seems to be what society shows us. So for me, as a parent of this child who is proudly walking to the beat of his own drum, and then I'm thinking, I just want you to go to I want to take you to the park because you love the park. But the drum at this moment is saying, I want to read a book, or I want to play with Legos. And it's kind of like, well, this is our window of time today for you and your sister to go to the park. So put your shoes on. And then it's just like, no, I'm not putting my shoes on. So what inspired me to come back onto this path of self rediscovery and self awareness and the deep work of what are the misbeliefs that I have that make me think that I need to make my son put his shoes on and go, what is that about? So this desire to my environment suddenly cannot feel safe because I can't predict the current outcome. I have planned that this is the time we will go to the park. You do not want to go to the park. I also know that you will cry when I come back from the park with your sister because you didn't go, but I am not going to manhandle you to the park. So it's just been such an interesting journey for me. And what a cool opportunity to come back to that playfulness of like, great, read your book. You get to choose your own path. You get to walk to the beat of your own drum, instead of the parenting that I feel as though I experienced, which was turn the drum off, shove it in a closet, Like there is no drum. Like the band of the family is marching this direction, and you will fall in line.
Yeah.
This is the identity I expect of you. This is the direction we're going. And so therefore, little Andrea experienced the same kind of thing. Like my light is not okay. My light, my way, my voice is not okay. So march over here and do it like this and just fit in, because if you're cast out, it hurts so bad. So it's just so interesting how that can show up in our adulthood and exacerbate in all these bizarre self-defense mechanisms because of some story that we are still living from our childhood. And if we keep not looking at it, it's just going to keep showing up. And we always have the opportunity to shift or to look at the past. But if we keep not doing the inner work and we're not happy with our life, then you're basically choosing to keep having your life not work.
Yeah, I totally agree. And think it's so amazing that you're like healing your family lineage and like creating this new life for your family, which is so incredible. And I think you also mentioned a really good point in terms of going to playfulness for problem solving.
Mm.
So this is a huge one for me. I think we often think about play and some of its other benefits like mental health, or which is really important, or like fun or productivity. But playfulness, when it comes to problem solving, is a game changer. It really gets us in a lighter energy. It helps us get unstuck. We can really come back at things from this new perspective. New solutions can open up. So I know for me, that has been one of the biggest things, especially when we are coming with backgrounds like this. We are prone to stress, and we have been like conditioned that way, often conditioned with like fear and shame. So in terms of problem solving, I know for me at least, it's felt like there's always been so much anxiety and it's been so stressful, and my thoughts can just like spiral, and it feels like the end of the world, because at least that's how I was conditioned. But when I started thinking about things playfully or taking a step back, like, gosh, it is just like incredible what play can do. So I just wanted to mention that, and can also just give an example. Like, one thing I love to do is if you are feeling stuck and I don't know, maybe you have to have like a hard conversation with your boss, or you're gonna get let go or anything like that. Come up with like solutions that make no sense, like ridiculous solutions that you would never ever do. Like, it can be about like you're going to dress as a pirate and like get a treasure chest, and it doesn't even have to be related. But the reason we do that is to get out of this stuck energy, put our mind to something else so that we can soothe our nervous system. And then once we've come up with this list that's like made us smile, we can go back to the first problem, but we're going to be doing it from a lighter energy. So I actually do this with corporations a lot, and it is just like such a game changer. And there are ways to do this in relationships, with kids, at work, really everywhere.
I love that idea. And that's kind of what, yeah, that's what set me off on that direction, is that my son and now my parenting with both children is, okay, this is a situation that typically triggers me, like the kids are not getting ready for school or something like that. And it's that opportunity that, like I in a prior interview, we talked about how the subconscious decides how you're going to react about at least 5 seconds before your conscious mind is aware of what you've decided, what your subconscious has decided, and we can reprogram that. And so in that time, I have found that if I breathe and make a playful choice, like breathe and pause and then choose and get a little goofy, or make a joke, somehow lighten it. It's amazing how just what you said of giving your brain and your body an opportunity to see it differently. Because if in the past it was this whole everybody not getting ready for school, which is starting soon, is stressing, I can feel my stress levels rising. I can feel me going to not a great place in my mind. If I can crack a joke or put the cereal bowl on my head for a second and just I loved what you said about just calming the nervous system for just a moment, which interestingly opens you up to what else is possible in the moment besides gripping it more tightly and having a stress response.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's so amazing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's been working. It's a process.
Yeah, absolutely. It's totally a
It's a
process.
process.
Yeah.
Well, Kara, I don't want to, I know our guests are, I try to do, 30 to 40 minutes per interview, but I'd love for you to share a bit about the gift that you're offering our viewers today.
Yeah, so this is actually a perfect kind of segue because we're just talking about soothing the nervous system. And this gift will definitely help you do that. So I have created a free EFT tapping. EFT stands for emotional freedom techniques. And what we do is we balance the body's energy by tapping on different meridian points, which I will guide you through. So it's kind of like acupuncture without the needles. What's great about EFT is you get to call in negative emotions, which might seem like, why are we going to tap into negative emotions? But we need to do that so we can feel them and release them and then call in what we're wanting. So this specific EFT sequence I've created is actually about releasing fear of judgment and perfectionism so that then we can call in confidence and playfulness and joy. I have people who are doing this consistently and they actually say their life has changed. So honestly, use this. It is free. Do it as much as you want. You will have lifetime access. And I can guarantee you, you are going to see shifts in your life, like wholeheartedly. It will happen.
That is a great gift. I've done EFT once and it was really amazing. And it actually felt really good. Like I
Yes.
remember I think for me, it was like the tapping across the cheeks just felt really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, it feels so good. And it's nice to do this like somatic process as well that incorporates mind and body. And yeah, like it's so good when you are feeling your nervous system really like rile up and you're just looking to like calm yourself and feel more confident and put yourself out there because you are so worthy of really fully expressing yourself. Like life is so short and people need you in your full self-expression. The world needs you.
And thank you for this tool in assisting us in getting back to that amazing, authentic person that we are. And so thank you for coming in here with us. I would like to let our viewers know that, keep an eye on your email inbox, join our Awake Free community, right? Because that is where we will share upcoming workshops with things like EFT and with methods and tools that you can utilize to up level your life and reconnect with that authentic, vibrant, beautiful human and soul that is inside of you. And so keep an eye on those places. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Andrea Luzon. Thank you, Kara. This has been beautiful, and we'll see you all here next time.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.